Welcome, everyone. Please make sure that you add your contact information in the chat and mute yourself for now. We will get a chance to speak later on.
Hey guys.
Welcome. Hope you like our music. We always have a good time here at the Latin Chamber. Welcome also to everybody watching us live right now on social media. Thank you for joining us. Make sure that you add your information in the chat for those of us that are just joining right now. Still have a couple minutes to get your favorite drink also if you don't have it. Me too, Toya. It's just I put it in a fancy glass today. We'll be getting started shortly, just giving some more time for people to join us. For those of us watching live, also feel free to drink. We give it about a minute more and then we'll get started. All right, everyone, let's get started. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you haven't already, make sure that you add your contact information in the chat. We always share those informations at the end, so with everybody that's here. So please make sure that you add it because that's how others are gonna connect to you in the future. And if you haven't already, make sure that you grab your drink. We love to do this fun thing here at Hora Feliz where we dedicate a special word to our drink. So today the word is SBA. So every time you hear SBA, we cheers and we take a drink. So I just said it like a couple times. Cheers. So throughout the presentation today and our connections, please make sure that when you hear that word, you take a sip. And I will go over the agenda for today. Basically just to welcome you, to let you know that this is streaming live on Facebook. So the presentation side will be on Facebook Live. And then once we go into networking, for those watching us live, that's where the recording will stop. So in the future, please make sure that you connect with us through Zoom so that you get the opportunity to network with everybody that is joining us here today. And at the end, we have a special surprise, a little raffle. It wouldn't be Hora Feliz without a raffle. So stay tuned to the end to see what that is. And now I will pass it on to Mr. Don Jackson, the Director of SBA Lending for True Lion Federal Credit Union. And thank you so much, True Lion, for being here today and sponsoring this event. So I'm going to pass it on to Don.
Well, thank you, Debbie. I am honored to be here and appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about SBA.
Sure.
You know, I was thinking about the word SBA and cheers every time we say it. And I thought, that could be good and bad. We're going to have a good time if I say SBA a lot. But if I say it too much, we won't remember anything I said. So I'm trying to find a balance there. So anyway, the kind of what I wanted to talk with you about, and I'm going to try to share my screen here. So bear with me. Can you see it? Okay, perfect. The title of what I want to talk about is why SBA. Cheers. SBA is one of those things a lot of people look at and think about, and they think, well, that's the government, that's a bank. What really is SBA? So I wanted to just touch on a few highlights of SBA, and I want this to be fairly informal. So as we go through it and there's questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Kind of what I want to go through on the agenda tonight is why would someone consider an SBA loan? There's SBA again. Where do I get an SBA loan? How do I get an SBA loan? SBA scenarios, misconceptions of SBA loans, and then questions and answers. That was a lot of SBAs. So if you guys need to take a moment for another cheers, go right ahead. Why would someone consider an SBA loan? There's several reasons you would look at an SBA loan. Business acquisition, you want to buy a business, you want to expand your business, you'd like to purchase a building for your business or real estate for your business, you'd like to purchase equipment for your business, you need to remodel, you need to, the big term there is balance sheet cleanup. A shorter word for that, or a more common word, is probably consolidation. A lot of business owners find themselves with a lot of small debts, and sometimes they can consolidate those to help maximize their cash flow. We see a lot of partner buyouts where you've got one partner that's maybe ready to retire or move on. The other partner can buy them out. And lastly, there is working capital. Why would you consider an SBA loan? Some of the reasons that SBA is a very attractive loan is you've got a low down payment whenever you're buying a business or a piece of real estate. Sometimes we refer to that as injection, a limited amount of cash that you have to put into it. We can set those loans up for longer periods of time, so it keeps your payments lower. We can finance what in banking world, credit union world, we call goodwill. So basically that's just saying that there's what we're financing is not hard assets in many cases. It's not real estate or something that is considered collateral. So these loans aren't necessarily collateral dependent. Couple of neat things about SBA is you don't have balloon payments. You don't have requalifying. You can get loan amounts up to $5 million. They're available for new and established companies. You can use the proceeds from SBA loans for a lot of different reasons, which is different from a lot of loans that you get at a financial institution, because normally those are more classified for real estate or equipment or that kind of thing. So that's why SBA is a good thing. Where do you get an SBA loan? A lot of people, when they hear the term SBA loan, they immediately, their mind goes to the government, because it is a government sponsored loan product. And essentially the way that works is you have the banks actually lend the money, the banks and credit unions. I gotta make sure I mention that credit union term, because True Lion is a credit union. That's very important. We loan the money, but we have a guarantee from the government to make sure that we limit our risk in those loans, which the neat thing about that, it allows us to in layman's terms, I guess I would say, it allows us to take some risk that we would not take without that government guarantee. So SBA doesn't provide that loan, but they give the guarantee of that loan to the bank. Now, I want to stop for a second. There's several different types of SBA loans, and most of what I'm talking about tonight is the SBA 7A. Now, we've all heard in the news over the last couple of years, the loans that have been made available for businesses because of the pandemic, the PPP loans, the economic disaster loans, those kind of things. And some of those are directly with SBA, but mostly what I'm talking about tonight is your SBA 7A product, which is a loan that you get through the bank. How can I get an SBA loan? Some of the general criteria, if you're an existing business or even a new business, you've got to demonstrate. One of the most important things about an SBA loan is they want to make sure there's enough cash flow to repay that debt. And that's in one of two things. If you're an established business, they want to make sure there's historical financials that would take care of that. Or if you're a new business, we can sometimes use projections to show that this is a viable business option. The guarantors, or you as a business owner, you do need experience. You do need acceptable credit. For instance, I use this example a lot of times. Many times you hear of, well, I've worked in corporate America for all these years, and I love to cook hamburgers. I think I'm going to open a hamburger restaurant. And that doesn't necessarily give you the experience that SBA would be looking for that business. But so that's a couple of things they look for. If you're 20% or more of an owner, you do have to guarantee the loan. So you can't just have the business guarantee it. You as the business owner do have to guarantee that as well. If you buy real estate with an SBA loan, you have to have at least 51% of it occupied by your business. Now, you could buy a piece of property and rent out part of it, but you have to occupy at least 51% of that. The injection or down payment, that's going to vary depending on the strength of the project, what the purpose of the loan is, and kind of how it's structured. There's loans out there that require 0 down payment, and sometimes we require up to 25% or more. But that's typically what you're going to see in a range. Wanted to touch on a couple of recent scenarios. Sometimes I feel like going through all the lingo that people that are in lending use, sometimes as I think I used the term layman earlier, sometimes that just goes way over and we don't realize it. So I've always thought that stories tend to tell better, give a better example than what just going through details do. So a couple of things that we've done recently. We had a company buyout. It was a automotive. It was actually a real estate buyout. It was an automotive repair business that was purchased. The guy had been leasing his building for a number of years, and he wanted to buy it. So he bought the building that he was leasing. He also consolidated several equipment debts that he had. And the end result was he saved over $17,000 a month by buying this building and consolidating the debt. So he was a very happy camper once everything was done. We had another scenario where we had a key employee had actually bought 10% of the company or earned 10% of the company over the years. He'd been there for a long time. And the majority partner owned the other 90%, and he was ready to let this particular piece of the company go. So this employee just did this it was a $2.7 million loan to buy this company. He did not have to put any money down, and there was very little collateral. So that shows you one of the really cool things about SBA and some of the things that they can do. Before I go a whole lot further, I'm going to pause for a second to see if there's any questions at this point. Okay, great. Well, misconception of SBA loans. Sometimes people think that SBA is only for small loans that are startups, but we do a lot of loans for a lot of large companies. SBA increased their size standards. It's actually been more than a couple of years ago. It's been several years ago. There used to be like a $3 million cap. Now it's up to a $5 million cap as far as the loan amount. And the size of the business can be a lot larger than it used to be. So it's opened it up for a lot more people. A big one out there that you always hear about SBA is there's too much paperwork. It's a painful process. And what I always tell people, there are a few additional forms that are government related. But when you've got a specialized department that does it day in, day out, it streamlines the process and makes it a lot simpler than if you were just going somewhere that they focused on SBA just a little bit and not had a specialized department. So that's a critical piece of that. SBA loans are for weak businesses. I've heard bankers over the years refer to SBA as the loan of last resort, which is very, very far from the truth, because SBA is a great loan that offers excellent solutions for some of the strongest businesses out there. SBA is for small loans and startups. That I mentioned that earlier. If I look at my average loan size over the last several years, it's probably about $2 million now. So we do. That doesn't mean that we don't do some startups. We still do some of those, but it's not just for those opportunities. Fees and rates are too high. SBA fees and rates, they're very competitive. And the nice thing about them is with a conventional loan, you have to pay all those fees separately and outside of your loan. SBA allows you to include those in the loan, and they're amortized over the entire term of that loan. So it really makes it a lot better. And one of the neat things that's going on right now is one of the incentives that the government's put out there is they have waived fees through September of this year on SBA loans, on which the big fee that I speak of there is the guarantee fee that SBA charges. They've waived that, and they've also added to that, that they will pay the first 3 months of your payments on an SBA loan as long as you close before September. So that's a nice incentive that's out there right now. That is my formal part of the presentation. The rest is kind of questions and answers. Any questions that you guys might have that I can answer at this point?
Hello, this is Christian. I was just wondering if we're gonna get a copy, or can we get a copy of this valuable information? I work with business owners, and this is some good information that you're providing.
I would be happy to. In fact, if you can see my email address on the screen there, feel free
Yes.
to reach out to me, and you and I can connect, and I can share this, and then also be a resource for you to help answer any additional questions you may have in the future.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others?
Well, I have another one. Then if no one's saying anything.
Oh, yes, sir. Go
So
right ahead.
going back to the loan and the funds that you guys are contributing.
Uh-huh.
If someone is a business owner for more than, say, a year, but they don't have a social, how would that work?
SBA will work with you. You do not have to be a citizen for an SBA loan, but you do have to be legal. So if they've got their visas, or there is a couple of additional things we have to do for that type of scenario. But definitely, if you have something like that, let's talk about it and see if there's a way we can help these people.
Definitely. Okay. Thank you so much.
I will take a moment. There's a couple of my teammates that have joined us tonight that works on our SBA team. Scott Jones and Todd Surratt are on the Zoom call as well, and any of us are more than happy to help with any scenarios that might be needed. And like I said, use us as a resource. It doesn't have to be. We're not here just to do loans all the time. If we can be a resource to the chamber, we want to be able to do that for you.
I have another question.
Yes, sir.
Christian again. So we're already more than half of the year. So how long do they have to apply and get this done? Would this run for another 12 months, 6 months?
As far as the incentive, is that what you're asking about?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's we're starting to. In fact, if you were to ask my other teammates, they hear me talk about the urgency of getting things moving almost every day, because as we get closer to that September 30th date, that's when the incentives are. At this point, they're scheduled to go away. Now we may see some other incentives, or we may see them extended, but at this point we haven't seen anything, and really have no anticipation of that. But we don't know that for a fact. But typically, especially as busy as SBA is right now, you're probably would need to get things moving. Let's see, September, I would say definitely in early July, early mid-July, to make sure we hit that, because as they get busier toward the middle to end of September, the process is going to get slower.
Okay. Another question is, who can provide this help? Only banks, credit unions?
Yep. Typically, there are a handful. In fact, I think there's only about 3 non-bank lenders in the country that do SBA 7A loans. But typically, it's going to be your credit unions, your banks, and one thing I will say, you'll find there is a big difference from one bank to another in what they do with SBA loans. And we call it overlays. Many banks underwrite these loans very closely to what SBA puts out, that they call it their standard operating procedures. And a lot of banks will underwrite closely to that, but many banks put their own rules in there as well. So just because someone didn't get the answer they wanted at one institution, it always pays to look at, even though it was an SBA loan, it always pays to look at others. And one of the things that's really neat about TrueLiant is that we do underwrite very, very closely to that standard operating procedure, which allows us to do a lot of things a lot of other institutions don't do. So, but to your point, yes, that's where you're going to get it. Now, in many cases, we may get someone that's maybe early in the process, they want to start a business or something to that effect. We may end up referring them to an organization in town called SCORE. SCORE works very closely with SBA and does mentorships and that kind of thing to help people put business plans together and do things like that. So we do try to put people where they're going to get the most help.
Okay, well, thanks for the explanation.
Thanks, Christian.
Of course.
Any others?
Hey, Don, how are you? This is
Good. How are you?
Good. Hey, so we've been in business for, I want to say about going on 5 years this September, and we're at a point where we are kind of outgrowing our space. We need to move into our own building, so to say. We've already identified 2 parcels. However, it looks like we're probably going to be having to pull an SBA loan in order for us to acquire land, build the building, all that good stuff. Would you say one loan would be better than the other loan? Because I know there's 2 different ones on the SBA side for that.
You've got your what a lot of people refer to, the 504 is probably what you're speaking of there. 504 is used very much for real estate lending. The 7A loan is used for real estate as well as other things. And what I would do there is probably, there's several things I would ask you of what's important to you. If things like down payment, injection, some of those kind of terms are very important to you, the 7A is your best bet. If that's not important, the 504, really the biggest benefit with the 504, essentially the way it works is 50% of that loan is a conventional bank loan, and 40%, typically 35 to 40, depending on the type of project you have, is the SBA second mortgage piece of it. So depending on what you're doing, sometimes that is a very good loan as well. But I'd be happy to sit down and walk through some questions with you to help you determine, which one. The cool thing about the 7A with a building loan is you can do that without any down payment. You can do it with no injection whatsoever. Keep your cash for other opportunities or whatever the case might be. But yeah, certainly I'd be more than happy to sit down one-on-one with you or chat on the phone about what's most important to you and which one would be the best fit.
Okay. Yeah, we're currently having preliminary conversations. We've had 2 conversations already with different banks, and again, just navigating through this right now. I know that there's one that offers operating capital while the build is occurring. Yep. And then, but there's another, I think, that also offers for building, furnishing, and then extended into a 25-year or a 30-year. Yep. So we're definitely, again, trying to educate ourselves on this, but I feel like we've been working at finding a space and location for months now.
Oh, I understand.
And finally, we submitted 2 LOIs that it seems like they are getting some traction. So, we'll have that due diligence period that we've got to just figure it out, right?
Gotcha. I
So
understand.
yeah,
Well,
any conversation with you would be great.
yeah, just reach out. More than happy to have a conversation. And you're just based on the two things you mentioned there. That's the two loans that you're actually looking at. It's the 504, the 7A, and I'd be more than happy to give you whatever little bit of knowledge I've got to help you make that decision.
Okay.
The downside is with it taking this long, unfortunately, construction costs have gone out the roof. So
Yeah.
your luck is very much like mine. That's the way things typically go.
Yeah. Now, considering True Lion did service our PPP loan as well.
Oh, cool.
You already have some of that information on record. Is that something that would make make the process easier?
It always makes it easier, although what PPP required and what we would require for a full-blown SBA loan is considerably different. So we would still, unfortunately, aggravate you for a lot of stuff.
Okay, cool. Yeah, not me. There's somebody in the back that does that.
I understand.
To sit here and continue my drink.
There you go. Well, on that note, SBA.
Okay, thanks.
Cheers.
Any other questions?
Christian here again.
Hey, Christian.
By any chance, do you have someone in your team that is bilingual? There's a lot of terminology that we have mentioned, and sometimes there's a language barrier.
I understand.
So, most of the people that are business owners that I get are bilingual, but there's
Right.
a portion that, although they're bilingual, they don't feel they want to make sure that they understand what they're going to get into under that
Totally
contract.
understand.
So
Unfortunately, I don't have someone on my team, but I've got several people within the organization that we can pull in to help us.
okay,
I wish I were bilingual, but I do well I speak Southern, which is a version of English, and many people don't understand it.
I have an accent too, don't worry. And for that, salute.
There you go.
There you go. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Well, Debbie, I am going to turn the mic back over to you and listen.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Don, for being here with us today and sharing this valuable information. Also, thank you for all of you that asked questions. And for those watching us live on Facebook right now, this is where the streaming will end for you because we are about to go into networking sessions. So thank you for joining us if you're watching live. For those of us that are here, we will be transitioning into 2 networking sessions. The first one is 12 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll go back in for another 12 minutes. So if you'll give me one moment to